In studio of Arianna Huffington, co-founder, editor-in-chief of the Huffington Post. Brian, I want to begin with you. When you look at all the various conspiracies, and we'll start with Acorn, which is where your attention is focused, what do you think the priorities should be for all of us, whether it's bloggers, people like myself hosting TV shows, Arianna, or anybody else, when it comes to asking questions of the relationship and conspiracies that are speculated in our government?
Well, I don't think I'd couch this in terms of a conspiracy theory. What we have here, according to a report from the House Government Reform Committee in July, is a criminal organization operating across state lines. Acorn has been involved in voter fraud, in tax fraud, in hiding embezzlement, and violations of the law prior to these recent sting videos. And I think that if there are senior people from Acorn who hold positions of power in the White House, like political director, like chief of staffing, that we need to know what they're doing.
I have a question for you, and again, I won't get into an Acorn debate one way or another, but I do wonder, when you see the corrupt nature or outdated nature of so many of our government systems, financial systems, obviously, that we perpetuate a monopoly right now in healthcare for reasons I can't comprehend. Why do you choose to devote your resources to this? Not that it's not a valid concern, but it strikes me as maybe number 20 or 30 on the list of priorities in terms of outdated systems and problems in our government when you look at a few trillion that came out of the taxpayer last year and a healthcare debate right now that refuses to address the elephant in the room, which is the healthcare monopoly and the employer-based healthcare system.
Well, Dylan, as I said, I don't see this as a question of outdated modalities or entities. This is a question of a criminal organization. We see that the Congress has launched an investigation into interrogations by CIA officers, and we have a special prosecutor for that, even though that has already been investigated and prosecuted. Now, if we have
Would you want a special prosecutor for the banks or for the health insurance, along with the Acorn special prosecutor?
Well, what crimes are they committing?
Well, the robbing of America's money by, again, utilizing national capital as a speculative instrument to pay themselves hundreds of millions of dollars and shedding all of the risk to the taxpayer while keeping the bonuses for themselves, or perpetuating an anti-competitive monopoly would certainly, and Sherman antitrust, if they didn't have an exemption, would inherently be a crime. I want to get Arianna into the conversation.
Just very specifically, we've had multiple groups funded by government defrauding American taxpayers, like Halliburton, that had to pay penalties for defrauding the American taxpayer in Iraq. I never heard of your organization or anybody else associated with Redstate asking for an investigation into why we are now giving them more money. The first thing that has to stop when a group has been shown to defraud the American taxpayers is they don't get any more money. So would you like Halliburton and all the other contractors that are actually defrauding the taxpayer to stop receiving any more government money?
Well, I think we're straying a little bit afield. In answer to your question,
if
Halliburton...
No, it's a very simple thing. You made the point that, again, giving money to those who defraud taxpayers, whether it's Acorn, Halliburton, a health insurance company, or a bank, seems to be the core issue.
Or labor unions or others. Yeah,
exactly.
I think that anyone that defrauds the federal government of money should get higher scrutiny.
So what's your answer to Arianna's question?
Should Halliburton stop getting federal money?
Yeah.
I think that in proportion to any illegalities committed by the corporation, sure, I've got no problem with saying...
Okay, well, let's have an alliance here about going after all these people. Going after, for example, what happened with Bank of America, defrauding its shareholders in giving Merrill Lynch bonuses without letting their shareholders know. And there is the SEC saying, don't admit any wrongdoing, just give us $33 million, it's all over. And Judge Rakoff is saying, no, there is so much happening across the system that to focus on just Acorn shows that this is very politically motivated.
Well, there are those that would accuse people in the mainstream media of trying to raise other issues to distract attention from things like Acorn.
But I'm not doing that, and I don't care about that. I've invited you here not only to discuss Acorn, because I think it's important that we cover Acorn, okay? But I also think it's important that we acknowledge that the critical issue with Acorn is defrauding taxpayers, period, whether it is by way of legislative corruption or outright fraud, whether it's Halliburton or Acorn. And I think Arianna presents a very powerful proposition, which is, instead of playing spitball fight and using a given lefty or righty issue to try to accumulate power, why not form an alliance? Myself, you, Arianna, I think there are others who would explicitly demand an updating of the systems of our government to get the transparency and, up to this point, lack of accountability, whether it's at Acorn, Halliburton, health insurance, or banks, underway. Are you up for that?
You know, that sounds good to me. I think sunlight is the best disinfectant. I think it's unfortunate that we see an entity like Acorn being convicted of in numerous states, 12 different states, of voter fraud over the last few years.
Nobody's contesting that. I think it's unfortunate that a few $1 trillion of my money and my children's money was used for the banks, that health insurance has a monopoly. I'll repeat myself all day. So no one disputes the things that upset you. We're simply saying that which upsets you is a very narrow focus that could be broadened to much broader fundamental problems with our government that are not lefty-righty but are taxpayer politicians.
I think that's a good point, and I'd like to know, for example, why the White House has dragged its feet on letting financial institutions pay back the TARP money. Why we can't take the TARP money that's been paid back and use it for deficit reduction or for debt reduction.
I agree. I would like to know why the White House doesn't acknowledge the fact that the TARP money is a misdirect from the fact that the taxpayer has trillions of dollars, even after the TARP money is paid back, that continues to subsidize our financial companies.
Or that we don't know.
We all have questions. We'll go all day. Listen, I'm sure you have great questions, Brian. I know Arianna has great questions, and I know I'm loaded with questions. I say the three of us get together and ask questions together. Brian, thank you very much for the time. We acknowledge your Acorn concerns, and we too would like to see that solved, along with a long list of things. I know I speak for Arianna when I say that as well. We'll get together afterwards and see if we can move forward with